Millions of years ago, long before clippers existed, human fingernails grew at the exact same speed they do today. Yet nobody died of infection or walked around crippled by 6-inch claws. In fact, if you examine ancient human skeletons, their hands show almost no signs of severe nail damage or crippling overgrowth.
How did our ancestors maintain short, functional nails for thousands of generations without a single sharp metal tool? The answer starts with a simple biological fact that most people completely overlook. Your fingernails grow about 3 millimeters every single month, which means over an average human lifespan, your body produces nearly 6 feet of solid keratin on your hands alone. Left completely unchecked, a single fingernail will naturally curve inward, thickening into a dense horn that snaps off at the root and leaves open wounds. So why do ancient cave paintings and early historical records almost never depict humans with long, twisted claws? The secret comes down to something you do every day without realizing it. Every time you open a tight lid, scrape dirt off a rock, or grip a rough wooden handle, your nails wear down by a fraction of a millimeter. For early hunter-gatherers, daily life was essentially a continuous, high-intensity sandpaper wheel. Digging up nutritious tubers from hard soil, skinning heavy animal hides, and weaving stiff plant fibers constantly ground down the tips of their fingers. Imagine rubbing the point of a soft wooden pencil against coarse concrete for 8 hours every single day. The tip does not grow long and sharp. It stays flat and worn down, whether you want it to or not. For hundreds of thousands of years, basic friction did all the work that modern clippers do for us in 5 seconds.
But what happened when humans finally stopped working with their hands every second of the day? You might think that moving indoors and inventing agriculture made nail care easier, but it actually created the very first cosmetic nightmare in human history.
When people settled into permanent farming villages, their hands were no longer constantly scraped raw by rough wilderness materials, which meant their fingernails suddenly started growing out of control for the very first time. To solve this brand new problem, ancient people turned to the ground beneath their feet and discovered volcanic rock.
Pumice stone, a lightweight rock filled with tiny abrasive gas bubbles, became the world's very first fingernail file over 10,000 years ago. Picture holding a light, scratchy gray stone and sliding it back and forth across the edge of your nail after a long day of farming. The porous volcanic glass sands down tough keratin just as smoothly as a modern foam emery board.
Archaeological digs across Egypt and ancient Mesopotamia have uncovered polished pumice stones sitting directly inside small makeup boxes, right next to charcoal, eyeliner, and berry lip stains. But filing your nails down with a piece of lava rock could take 20 minutes of tedious rubbing. So what did people do when they needed a fast fix?
The most common nail cutter in human history was not a tool at all. It was the set of sharp teeth sitting inside the human mouth. Biting your fingernails today is widely viewed as a nervous, dirty habit that teachers and doctors tell you to stop doing. But for hundreds of thousands of years, edge biting was a vital survival skill passed down through every human generation. Human incisors have a layer of ultra-tough enamel capable of applying hundreds of pounds of pressure onto a razor-thin line. Think about how easily your front teeth bite through a tough piece of dry jerky or a hard apple peel. With just a little bit of precision, those same front teeth act like a natural set of shearing blades that can nip off excess keratin in seconds. Anthropologists believe that edge biting was so universal that it actually influenced how ancient human jawbones developed and aligned over time. But relying on your mouth to trim your hands carried a hidden, deadly danger that almost nobody talks about today. While biting kept nails short and functional, it introduced massive amounts of soil, animal blood, and lethal bacteria directly into the human digestive system before antibiotics existed. In ancient Greece and Rome, medical writers like Hippocrates noticed that people who regularly bit their nails suffered from far higher rates of severe stomach illnesses, mouth ulcers, and fatal blood infections. This constant threat of disease forced early inventors to search for sharp handheld instruments that could trim nails without putting fingers anywhere near the mouth. Long before the discovery of bronze or iron, ancient humans turned to one of the sharpest materials in the natural world, obsidian glass.
Obsidian is created when molten lava cools so rapidly that crystal structures cannot form, resulting in a dark volcanic glass that can be fractured into edges just a few nanometers thick. That is significantly sharper than a modern steel surgical scalpel. Imagine holding a razor-thin flake of dark obsidian between your thumb and forefinger, carefully sliding the glassy edge right along the curve of your nail bed, and slicing through tough keratin like a warm piece of butter. Early flint and obsidian flakes found in cave sites show microscopic wear patterns that match scraping soft organic materials like bone, horn, and fingernails. Using a piece of glass that is sharp enough to cut through skin on a microscopic level required incredible hand-eye coordination and steady hands. If a worker slipped in the dark corner of a mud brick hut, the blade would slice deep into the sensitive nail bed, leading to fatal gangrene within days. To minimize the terrifying risk of bleeding to death from a slipped blade, ancient people developed an alternative method that used fire instead of steel. By holding the very edge of a long fingernail near a glowing ember or a heat-softened riverstone, the keratin worm softens and gently scorches away without burning the living skin underneath. Picture singeing the frayed ends of a loose synthetic rope with a pocket lighter to stop it from unraveling any further. Thermal trimming burnt away the jagged edges of the nail and instantly sealed off tiny microscopic cracks where dirt and rot could settle. As human societies grew more complex and stratified, fingernails stopped being just a matter of basic survival and transformed into a dramatic indicator of wealth and power. In ancient China, during the Zhou dynasty, wealthy aristocrats deliberately allowed their fingernails to grow several inches long to prove to everyone around them that they never had to perform a single minute of physical labor. To protect these massive, fragile claws from snapping during daily movement, Chinese royals invented elaborate metallic nail guards made of beaten gold, sterling silver, and carved jade. Imagine wearing long, hollow golden thimbles studded with rubies over your fingertips just so you could walk through a palace, showing everyone that you were far too rich to ever work with your hands. Lower-class peasant workers, meanwhile, were easily spotted because their nails were short, flat, battered, and stained with earth from sunup to sundown. This created a dramatic social divide across the ancient world. Short nails meant you were a hard-working commoner, while long, impractical nails proved you were royalty. So how did middle-class citizens in sprawling ancient cities like Rome trim their nails cleanly without burning them or resorting to dangerous glass blades? They visited specialized public barbers known as tonsores, who operated small street corner shops throughout the empire. Roman barbers did not just shave facial hair and trim heads. They used small curved bronze knives called coltelli to carefully pare and shape fingernails for paying customers. Picture sitting on a stone bench in a bustling Roman forum, while a trained craftsman uses a tiny curved copper alloy blade to scrape away your rough nail borders. Under Roman law, if a barber was careless and cut a customer's finger deeply enough to cause an infection, the customer could file a lawsuit for physical damage and lost working time. But if professional Roman barbers had access to metal blades, why did it take another 2,000 years for humanity to invent the simple spring lever clipper we use today? Small spring-loaded metal mechanisms were nearly impossible to manufacture on a mass scale until the height of the Industrial Revolution, meaning modern fingernail clippers are actually newer than the electric telegraph and the steam locomotive. Before the late 1800s, almost every family on Earth relied on small iron shears or simple folding pocket knives to trim their hands. In the Middle Ages, European blacksmiths forged heavy iron scissors that required considerable hand strength and often crushed the nail rather than slicing it cleanly. Think about trying to trim a piece of thin cardboard using a pair of dull garden pruners. The metal bends and tears the material instead of cutting, leaving painful, jagged hangnails that catch on clothing and rip down into the raw flesh. To fix those painful, jagged edges, medieval villagers carried small pieces of coarse slate or leather straps coated in fine sand to smooth out their fingertips after cutting. Even inside the grand royal courts of Renaissance Europe, nail maintenance was a slow, agonizing process that involved soaking hands in warm oils for an hour before paring the edges with silver rasps.
Across the ocean in North America, indigenous tribes developed completely different methods, using natural ocean materials that rivaled European metal tools.
Native American communities along the coasts harvested dried sharkskin, which is covered in millions of microscopic tooth-like structures called placoid scales, making it nature's most effective heavy-duty sandpaper. Imagine rubbing your fingertips against a stiff piece of dried sharkskin and feeling it effortlessly sand away tough keratin in just 3 or 4 smooth strokes.
In Arctic regions, Inuit hunters used carved walrus ivory scrapers and razor-sharp slate blades to trim their nails in sub-zero temperatures where dry keratin becomes brittle and shatters easily. In freezing climates, a split fingernail is not just an annoying minor inconvenience. It can lead to severe frostbite if cold air and moisture enter the open nail bed. Careful winter trimming was literally a matter of preserving your fingers from amputation during long hunting trips across ice fields. In ancient India, nail hygiene was integrated directly into daily religious and medical frameworks known as Ayurvedic codes. Ancient Vedic texts outlined exact times of day when nails should be cleaned and recommended using polished copper scrapers after warm oil baths. Picture soaking your hands in warm sesame oil to soften the dense protein fibers before using a smooth copper tool to gently push back cuticles and slice away excess length.
Every single culture across every continent independently solved the exact same biological challenge using whatever local materials were available to them. When you take a step back and examine human evolutionary history, fingernails themselves changed from thick animal claws into flat protective shields, specifically so our fingers could touch, feel, and manipulate small objects.
The flat shape of the human fingernail acts as a rigid backing support that allows the soft, fleshy pad of your finger to squeeze objects with incredible precision and force. The very tools that our ancestors created using their nimble fingers ended up creating the biological need to trim the nails on those fingertips. Without flat, well-maintained nails, early humans could never have tied thin leather cords, chipped flint arrowheads, or sewn warm animal skins together to survive the Ice Age. Today, we walk into a pharmacy, buy a cheap pair of steel clippers for $2, press down on a simple metal lever, and clip a nail in less than a second, without giving the process a single thought.
But every time you trim your nails, you are participating in an unbroken chain of human habit that stretches back over 200,000 years of survival, tool-making, and incredible human ingenuity. Have you ever tried filing or trimming your nails without modern metal tools? And how long do you think you could last using only ancient stone methods before reaching for a real pair of clippers?